thought that was the only thing that they're trying to do. I encourage you to go back just a few weeks before. The amazing thing about this case is that the president pushed forward these regulations after having been smacked down by the United States Supreme Court the week before. I mean, smacked down, 9-0. How many 9-0 cases do you see out of that court? But 9-0. The president made the argument. His solicitor made the argument that when it came to hiring ministers in your church, the name of the case was Hosanna Tabor. You suspect that's not a Catholic church. And the case was whether they could be required under employment discrimination statutes to hire people as ministers who didn't agree with the church's teachings. I think it was Justice Kagan that asked an oral argument to the assistant solicitor who argued the case for the Obama administration. Are you suggesting in this case that employment discrimination laws applied to churches for the hiring of ministers could require the Catholic Church to hire female priests? And she said yes. Understand what's at stake, folks. It's your economic liberty. It's your religious liberty. It's your freedom of speech. The Archdiocese of the military wanted to send a letter out similar to the ones that bishops all over the country did. And the United States Army said, no, you can't send that. Because the words talking about that you won't bend to this regulation are seditious. And they made them change the language before they could read it at the masses on Sundays. Ladies and gentlemen, this race is about freedom. It's about economic freedom and the opportunity to grow our country. It's about the freedom of being able to believe what you want to believe and practice that belief. I don't know if you've been listening to the President, the Secretary of State, and other members of the Cabinet when they talk about freedom of religion. They don't say that anymore. They don't talk about freedom of religion. They talk about freedom of worship. Freedom of worship. You folks all know there's a big difference between freedom of worship and freedom of religion. Think about what I just said. We have leaders of this country who are now narrowing the view of what religious liberty is in the First Amendment. To now, you have the freedom to go into that church and do whatever you want, but once you walk out, you're ours. You will do what we tell you, not what they tell you. This is the most important election in your lifetime. And you here in Ohio can have a huge say on whether we are going to be a country that your ancestors came to because they wanted to have a country that allowed them to live the lives that they were called to live, to do what they ought to do, to raise their families, to join the churches, and to live that life out in a public way, consistent with their moral values in their personal as well as their professional life. That is America. John Adams said our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. And so it's not surprising to me that when you hear Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg get asked the question, what Constitution would you recommend to a country if they were starting new today? Would you recommend the American Constitution? She said no. She would not. You see, they think the Constitution is a dead letter. It is just a working document from which they can impose anything that they believe is now current and in the best interest of, well, what they believe is in the best interest of the people. And she would take a better written constitution, the South African Constitution, as her model. Yes, this country is fractured and divided. because they're a group of people who are trying to foundationally change this country from what made it the greatest country in the history of the world and the shining city on the hill that millions want to come to. Not because they want to get welfare benefits. My grandfather didn't come to this country so he could get government benefits. There were no government benefits in 1925. Except one, freedom. That was Well, you have an opportunity in a little over, almost 2 weeks now. You've got an opportunity to do something about that here in Ohio. You are as Ohio, certainly for Republicans, so goes the nation. If a Republican wins Ohio, we're going to be pretty happy on election night that we're going to probably win this election. I need your help. We need you to go to the website and sign up. We got phone at home programs to be able to make calls from your cell phones or from anywhere else that you can do it off your laptops. We have the ability to be able to reach people all throughout Ohio and other states. We've got earlier primary. The greatest strength in America is our diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the greatest strength of America. The greatest strength of America is that we had a document that James Madison called the perfect remedy. The perfect remedy to what, you might add? To diversity. Diversity is not a bad thing, unless it is the only thing. And then we become divided. The greatness of America is in our great seal, that Latin phrase that I suspect many of you here know. E pluribus unum. The greatness of America, the perfect remedy of America, is how we had documents and a foundation that people of great diversity could come together and be one. Out of many, one. You never hear the phrase from the other side of the melting pot that is America. Because they don't see America like that. They see America as an opportunity to divide so they are the ones who can dictate how we're going to live our lives. I believe that we are best served when we hold on to our roots. We hold on to our differences and have those differences. But that we can come together and agree on basic principles by which to govern our country. That's the greatness of our country. And we need leaders who are constantly working to remind us who we are, why we became great, and that we can build this country again on the common enterprise of free people pursuing their dreams with limited government, to go out and, yes, be diverse, but come together on the ideal. That we can be diverse in pursuing a common goal. Ladies and gentlemen, Ohio is going to make a huge difference, not just in the fall, but in a couple of weeks in the primary. You have an opportunity here to stand up and shout loudly across this country that you want a true constitutionalist, true conservative, someone who believes in basic human values and human rights, religious liberty, strong families, a free and prosperous economy, a strong America overseas that keeps us safe, believes in the things that made America great. And so I ask for your help. I ask you to go to ricksantorum.com, sign up. I'm going to spend some time getting around talking to folks. We take pictures, put them up on your Facebook page, post them on Twitter. Get them out there. Help us every single way you can. And if you do that, this guy that in a sweater vest was traipsing around in a pickup truck in Iowa about 2 months ago with nobody paying any attention to us. Who has a message that is your message. What do you think I learned in going to 381 town hall meetings in Iowa and over 800? You listen to what is on the hearts of Americans. And you try to reflect that in a vision for our country. You help us here. You sign up, you work hard. You will take that first step in regaining the freedom that your ancestors fought for, died for. No one's asking to do that in this election. But I am asking you for every bit of help you can give us. Will you help us? I'd like to take a few questions so we can, do you have a microphone or no microphone? We can just, it's a small enough room, you can just shout it out. Yes, sir.
First off, thank you for coming to Ohio Valley today. I would like to ask the college students, if you're elected president, what would you plan to take to make college more affordable? And I'd also like to know what you're expecting to help pay down our nation's debt.
Well, the answer on paying down first off, we have to reduce the deficit and eliminate it. We have to balance this budget. I've pledged to balance the budget in 5 years. The idea that we can do it in one is ridiculous. We didn't get into this mess in 1 year. We're not going to be able to get out of it. But $5 trillion in deficit reductions over 5 years, what I pledged is every single year we will spend less money than the year before. So we're not talking about baseline budgeting here. We're talking about actually reducing and shrinking the size of government over 5 years. In so doing, we can get to a balanced budget. We'll take on the tough, intractable problems that we have to deal with in Washington. And it's not the defense budget. And frankly, as I mentioned before when I was talking about the size of government, the defense budget was 60% of the budget when I was born. It's now 17%. To suggest that the defense budget is the problem in this country means that you probably need to go back to school and study math a little bit more, because that's obviously not where the growth of government has been. When I was born, entitlement spending was less than 10% of the budget. It's now 60%. And it's growing faster and faster. It's going to consume the budget. And one of those entitlements are student loans. I mean, that's an entitlement. So we've created all of these government programs with the object of that the federal government should help you. Again, remember I talked about the more money that's sent to Washington, the harder it is for families, the less money that they have to contribute to nonprofit and charitable organizations or volunteer time. It's not just money. Everybody looks at money. Well, how much money are you giving? How much time can you give?